Okay, now I think you're live, Doctor.
All right.
Here. When you see this, that means you're live.
All right.
In which room is it supposed to be, Doc?
This is 210.
210? Let me go and check, see if it's working. Yeah, start talking, Doc.
Okay, so I'm sorry that we're a little late running, but we're good, and we're going to continue on with this streaming and with the information that I have for you. What we're going to do now is start with the PowerPoint presentation where we stop with the 4 skills that policy practitioners need. So we're going to start from there with the slideshow or the presentation. So the 4 skills that policy practitioners need are analytic skills, which are to evaluate social problems and develop policy proposals, to analyze the severity of specific problems, to identify the barriers to policy implementation, to develop strategies for assessing programs. The next skill is political skills, to gain and use power, to implement and to develop political strategy. They need also interactional skills to participate in task groups such as committees, coalitions, and to persuade other people to support specific policies. Also, you need value clarifying skills to identify and rank relevant principles when engaging in policy practice. So here are the political competencies. Using the mass media, taking a personal position, advocating a position with a decision maker, seeking positions of power, empowering others, orchestrating pressure on decision makers, finding resources to fund advocacy work, to develop and use personal power, donating time, resources, and advocacy group, advocating for the needs of a client, participating in demonstration, litigating to change policies, participating in political campaigns, and voter registration. So here are the analytic competencies. Developing a proposal, calculating trade-offs, doing force field analysis, using social science research, conducting a marketing study, using the internet, working with budgets, finding funding resources, diagnosing your audiences. Also designing a presentation, diagnosing barriers, implementation, designing implementation strategy, developing political strategies, analyzing the context, designing policy assessments, selecting a policy practice style. My computer's off. Who kicked you out?
The science teacher, Russian guy.
Y'all were in there before him and y'all not disturbing him. All you're doing is your work. Okay. Yeah. Excuse me 1 minute, I'll be right back. Okay, so we will continue with this now after we talked about the analytic competencies. So the next one is interactional competencies, coalition building, making presentations, building personal power, task group information formation and maintenance. You must form your task group and make sure it keeps functioning. And then when there's a conflict that arises, you must know how to manage conflicts. So the continuation to this is the last one with value clarifying competencies. It's engaging in ethical reason. Make sure that you're doing everything that's ethically sound and reasonable and right. So here are styles of policy practice. You have the electoral style, used when policy advocates want to get someone elected to office, or when they want to initiate a contest, a ballot initiative. Example, a proposition. The next one is the goal is to change the composition of government by what? Getting progressive candidates into office, defeating less progressive candidates, and getting a ballot initiative enacted or defeated. So here are legislative advocacy style. The goal is to secure the enactment of meritorious legislation or defeat ill-conceived measures. They work with advocacy groups, community-based organizations, professional associations, and lobbyists. They try to convince legislators to adapt their measure or to defeat a measure they dislike. Also, analytical style, using data to develop policy proposals or evaluate how existing policies are working. They often work in or with think tanks, academic units, funders, or government agencies, sometimes with all. Troubleshooting style, used to increase the effectiveness of operating programs or to evaluate them with an eye to improving them. They need to work with planning groups that consist of members of the implementing team. They sometimes work with outside groups of consumers or others who bring pressure on the staff of a program to change it. Advocates need a combination of each of the 4 skills to be effective. In hybrid styles, policy advocates combine or move between the 4 different styles. Policy practitioners who rely on a single skill are sometimes stereotyped. Opportunists rely on political skills. Do-gooders rely on values. Policy wonks rely on analytic data. So then you become stereotyped. They would call you an opportunist if you just use your political style. You're a do-gooder if you only rely on the value styles. And they call you a policy hunk because you only rely on analytic data, which is research. So, the applications of policy tasks and skills. The first task, deciding what is right and wrong. Policy advocates use a combination of ethical and analytic skills to decide whether to launch an advocacy intervention. They may use utilitarian or first principle ethical reasoning to decide that the status quo violates ethical precepts. They may draw upon research to decide that existing policies are not as effective as alternative or proposed ones. Task number 2, navigating policy and advocacy systems. Policy advocates use analytic and political skills to decide where to focus their policy advocacy. They may decide to try to change a specific state law, not only because it will best address a specific problem, but because it is politically feasible. They might use their analytic and political skills to focus on local public officials. Task number 3, building agendas. This is how policy advocates build agendas. They use analytic skills to demonstrate that a crisis exists and that the problem deserves serious attention. They use political skills to associate issues with political threats and opportunities in the minds of decision makers. They use interactional skills to place issues on the agendas of decision makers. They use value clarifying skills when they seek a preferred position for a specific problem in policy deliberations. Policy advocates use analytic skills to understand the social problems that they seek to address through policy initiatives. This is how they analyze the problems. This is task number 4. How many persons are impacted by a specific problem? What kinds of persons possess the problem by race, ethnicity, social class, place of residence, and other characteristics? What causes persons to develop specific social problems, such as homelessness? They use political skills to frame a specific policy proposal to attract the attention of decision makers. Task number 5, writing proposals. Policy advocates use analytic skills to develop criteria that they use to rank an array of policy initiatives that they wish to consider. They use political and value clarification skills to decide when to accept or oppose amendments. They use interactional skills by working with committees to fashion proposals and by having personal discussions with their proposals' friends and foes to bolster friendly amendments and soften or avert hostile ones. Task number 6, enacting policy. Policy advocates use analytic skills when developing strategy to enact policy. They analyze the context, identify power resources, and evolve a coherent political strategy. They use political skills to implement the strategy. They use interactional skills to gain inside information about the strategies that their opponents use to convert people to their side and to keep opponents on the defensive. They use value clarifying skills to decide what tactics are ethically meritorious and which are not. Notice the skills that they use. They interact these skills. They use analytic skills, political skills, and value clarifying skills. So, implementing the policy. They use these skills as well to decide what kinds of organizational arrangements will help implement specific policies. They use political skills to develop strategy to offset barriers to the effective implementation of a policy. And they use interactional skills to improve the implementation of a policy by mediating disputes, forging interagency agreements, and providing training sessions so staff know how to implement it. They use value clarifying skills to decide who should receive priority in getting services when resources are insufficient. Remember, these are the 4 skills that they use. Number 1, analytic skills. Number 2, political skills. Number 3, interactional skills. And number 4, value clarifying skills. And task number 8, assessing policy. Policy advocates use analytic skills to decide what kinds of data are needed, how to collect them, and how to interpret their findings. They use political skills to manage conflict, such as when they encounter disagreement about what evaluation criteria to use. They use interactional skills to develop an assessment methodology, gather data, and interpret findings. The 8 tasks also apply to what? Developing and managing a political campaign. So those of you who wants to develop a campaign or manage a campaign, you may want to review these 8 tasks that will help you to defeat an opponent or win an election. Number 1, a candidate may run for office because she believes her opponent lacks ethical grounding to decide what is right and what is wrong. She selects which office to seek as she navigates policy and advocacy system. She decides when it is propitious to run for office in the context of background factors, agenda building. She needs to decipher why her likely opponent is defeatable. This is policy analysis. She needs to build her case so that she stands a decent chance of winning. This is proposal construction. She needs to actually wage the campaign by making correct strategy choices, mustering volunteers, raising funds, and using the mass media. Policy enacting and policy implementing. That is what this is. She needs to assess her strategy and campaign organization so she can decide whether to run again if she loses or to develop strategy for the next campaign if she wins. That is evaluation. Policy candidates also need the 4 skills. Remember, I told you, these are the 4 skills that they need. Political skills, why? To devise strategy. Value clarifying skills to decide what tactics are ethical to use during the campaign. Analytic skills to initiate and debate campaign issues and to devise solutions to them. And of course, interactional skills to develop and maintain a campaign organization. The variety of policies. Social workers confront policy issues at virtually every turn. The services they provide are dictated by policies from many sources. These policies shape the lives and works of citizens, clients, and implementing staff. These policies vary in their effects and importance. Some are trivial, others have considerable impact. They vary in their malfeasibility. Some of these are easier to change than others. Policy advocates need not focus on one particular kind of policy. They can try to change simple or complex agency or legislative or controversial or non-controversial policies. This underscores the need for flexibility. Policy practice occurs in many kinds of settings, takes many forms, and varies with the issue and the context. We must understand the concept, skills, tasks, and frameworks that apply to a range of policy practice situations. The use of power is crucial in policy advocacy. Here we'll talk about overcoming discomfort with power. Power is used to persuade highly placed officials to prioritize an agenda, help enact or block proposals. Power gains access to networks of people who have information. It is not unethical for social workers to develop and use power. In fact, they already use power in their professional work. They use sanctions and penalties, for clients whose responses to service fall outside expectations. They enforce or choose not to enforce agency procedures. They take sides in family or other conflicts, sometimes in subtle ways. We need to demystify power and declare it a professional resource, vital to both clinical work and policy practice. Power needs to be observed, modeled, and practiced as a professional skill. Social workers also need to develop leadership skills so they can initiate and assume important policy-making roles. Policy leadership is taking the initiative to develop new policies and to change existing ones to improve the human condition. Social policy role in ethological frameworks. When social workers fail to exert policy leadership, they allow other people with less commitment to clients' well-being and to oppress minority needs to shape the human service delivery system. Social workers who wish to help their clients have a professional duty to try to perform those policies, try to reform those policies that cause or exacerbate their clients' problems. Otherwise, they ignore key elements of the ecosystems of their clients. Policy advocacy is thus a professional intervention because it is geared toward improving the well-being of citizens and clients. That is the end of this lecture for today, and that is lecture number 3. We will start with lecture number 4 on tomorrow. Thank you for your attention and for your cooperation. I appreciate everything that you do. And like I say, I need you to continue to send me your PowerPoint presentations on what you have gotten out of this class so far for this session. So I need the balance of them. You may email me your questions and concerns at rmcdonald@texascollege.edu or call me. And remember, when you call or text me, identify who you are and what class you are in. And I'm going to give you my telephone number. This is my cell number for those of you who prefer texting. It's 318-470-2608. Take care. God bless. See you tomorrow. Same time, 10 a.m. Thank you so very much.